Joining us now from Washington is Senator Tom Coburn, Republican and practicing physician from Oklahoma. He was also one of the Gang of Six senators and a member of the SimpsonBowles Commission. Senator Coburn has authored the brand new book called The Debt Bomb, a bold plan to stop Washington from bankrupting America. And Dr. Coburn, thanks so much for being with us today.
Appreciate being able to be with you.
Well, in the book, you issue a pretty harsh critique of Congress and a dire warning about the future economic situation of the nation. So let's begin with your concerns about Congress. You write that the Senate is heavily sedated and that 90% should be fired. How come, and how does this factor into the debt crisis we face today?
Well, think about it for a minute. We owe almost $16 trillion in debt. Everybody knows that's not sustainable. We're going to add $1.3 trillion to the debt this year, and you've not seen one thing come out of Congress that addresses that. Why is that?
Well, can you elaborate for us exactly why you believe that 90% should be fired?
Well, I said that tongue-in-cheek in terms of relating to Jack Welch's program at GE, where they dropped the bottom 10% of their employees every year and replaced them. All you have to do is, Congress is not addressing the problems in front of the country. And the reason is careerism. People are not going to do what is necessary because they think it might affect their reelection. And when we're thinking about the next election, always ahead of the problems of the country is ill-served. And my prescription for that is you have to change who's here.
Well, your book places blame on members of Congress in both parties who, you write, refuse to let go of the perks of power instead of protecting the nation from financial calamity. Can you detail for us exactly who in Washington you believe deserves the most blame and why you feel they're responsible?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we are responsible. And as I alluded to earlier, the fact that Harry Reid has not addressed one of the critical issues facing our country. Where is a plan to fix Medicare? Medicare's Part A trust fund will be bankrupt in 2016. The sooner we address it, the less pain it's going to be to fix it. No plan, no talk about it, no blocking anything to go to the floor that would have fixed that. Where's the plan to restabilize Social Security and give it a life so that so many people who are so dependent on that can be assured that their Social Security will be there? There's no plan. I co-sponsored a plan. I have one coming out with Joe Lieberman. We have addressed bipartisan in terms of Medicare. Can't get any of that to the floor. Had a co-sponsored bill, 35 senators in the Senate co-sponsoring a bill to fix the fraud and abuse in Medicare. Can't get it to the floor. So I would put number one up there as the leader of the Senate in terms of him not addressing the real issues in front of the country.
So you blame Harry Reid?
I blame Republicans as well. When we offer amendments and they don't pass, and they're common sense amendments because people are afraid someone of their constituent might be hurt, and Republicans may not have voted for it either, what you have to say is, what are they thinking about? Are they thinking about the short term and their short-term political career, or are they thinking about what's best for the country in the long term?
Now, President Obama and you are considered friends. What is your analysis of his leadership on this issue? And in your view, does he deserve a second term?
Well, let me answer the second part first. No, he does not. I think his leadership is sorely lacking on the major problems facing our country. He was handed a tough economy. I think many of the programs he put forward and passed when they had absolute control of the Congress have been exactly the opposite prescription that we should have for our country. So even though I'm a good personal friend of him, I absolutely disagree with him on 98 or 99% of the issues. But I think that's one of the points I make in the book is you actually can oppose people and still be friends with them. It doesn't have to be rancor and harshness. You can actually have a disagreement. I yearn for the date where we have real debates in the Senate again. We're having a problem. The postal bill is up on the floor. Harry Reid just filled the tree. So there's no amendments, no real debates going to happen in the Senate in terms of fixing the post office. And the bill that's up is not going to fix the post office because everybody's afraid that if you close processing centers or slow down, eliminate Saturday delivery, or eliminate some post offices, they may not get reelected. But the fact is the post office is going broke and that won't fix it. And we lack the courage and we lack the character to do what the country needs us to do. And we need to talk to Americans like adults and say, here are the problems, here are the options, which would you have us do? We are all going to make some sacrifice if we're going to solve the problems that are facing our country. And you cannot belie the fact that the last 30 years in this country, we've lived off the backs of our kids to come.
What kind of response have you received from your fellow lawmakers to your book?
Oh, they're all wanting to know if they're in the 10% that ought to be still around.
Well, Senator, you are a member of the Simpson-Bowles Commission. Why do you think that the president backed off from endorsing the commission's conclusions?
I don't know. I think that's a good question to ask him. I think it's a major mistake that they made. And I think they were thinking politically instead of policy and what was the best interest of the country. The Simpson-Bowles Commission did some significant things. There were some hard things in there, especially in terms of Social Security, in terms of fixing it, making sure it's solvent forever. There was very little in terms of Medicare. There were significant discretionary spending cuts, non-mandatory, non-Medicare cuts in it. I think they made a major mistake in not endorsing it and asked that we move on it.
Dr. Coburn, you have said that we could go the way of Greece in 2 years. Do you think that we're on the verge of a sudden economic collapse worse than the Great Depression?
I certainly do, and let me tell you why. Our interest rates on 10-year bonds right now are around 2%. We owe $16 trillion. We have $121 trillion in unfunded liabilities. If you go back to our historical costs for interest, it's around 6%. So if you had 4% additional interest cost onto the 16 trillion that we have now, and in 2 years from now it'll be 18 or 19 trillion, you add 4 percentage points to that, you're talking $600 to $700 billion just in additional interest costs. There will be a point in time where the rest of the world will not loan us money because they doubt in our ability to repay it. And before we get to that point, the interest rates are going to creep up. And as they creep up, you're going to take $600 billion out of a $3.6 trillion budget, $3.3 trillion budget, and you're going to say, we're going to have to make these cuts just to make the interest payments. We're borrowing money now to make interest payments.
So how do we defuse the debt bomb then?
You defuse the debt bomb by doing three critical things. One is you reform the tax code and you put back in place a pro-growth tax program where you flatten the rates, you broaden the base, and you create an incentive for capital to be invested. We have $3 trillion sitting on the sideline that's not being invested right now. The second thing you do is you eliminate the waste, duplication, and fraud that's ongoing right now in the federal government. That buys you $3.5 trillion over 10 years. And then finally, what you do is you markedly expand our natural resource base by utilizing our own energy. We have enough energy. We have more carbon-based fuel in this country than China, Canada, and Saudi Arabia combined. If, in fact, we were to take advantage of that, that could save us $300 to $400 billion a year in balance of payments. It would create millions of new jobs. It would create millions of wealth for our country and would put us on a growth again. So it's not hard to fix our problem. There's not a problem in front of us we can't solve. What we lack is leadership and vision to solve those problems. And an adult conversation with the American public about the severity of our problems, the urgency of our problems, and that we can fix them. What we lack is the courage to do so.
Dr. Coburn, let's turn to the GSA scandal. Some members of Congress are calling for indictments and criminal charges for those GSA officials who resigned amidst allegations of overspending at a 2010 Las Vegas conference. How do you believe we should hold those responsible accountable?
Well, I think the first people you should hold responsible is Congress. We put out a report over 2.5 years ago on the excessive conference spending by all the agencies. It was ignored by members of Congress. Nothing happened on it. And we outlined then the problem. So the problem is known. Congress, the only reason you're seeing any action in Congress now is because it now has become part of the media, which goes to my very point is members of Congress should be fired. They've known this for years. Why haven't they done anything on it? We've actually offered amendments to try to fix it, and they were voted down in the U.S. Senate. You ought to go through and look at everybody that voted against those amendments and say, why should you still be here now that 2 years after this report comes out on excessive conference spending, why are you just now doing something? They're just now doing something because it gives them a political advantage to look good when they should have been doing the hard job of oversight and fixing these problems before they became so bad.
Okay, what about pork barrel spending? There's a new report out today that finds that pork barrel spending has gone down a whopping 98% after a voluntary moratorium on earmarks by Congress. What is your response to this report, and do you think that we need a permanent ban on earmarks?
I do think we need a permanent ban on earmarks. I think a temporary ban won't solve the problem. It goes against the nature of the career politician. They want to send money home so they look good, so it'll help in their reelection. Earmarks and pork barrel spending are the gateway drug to debt, and that's where we find ourselves today. And so what we ought to do, and we haven't eliminated all the pork barrel spending yet. Matter of fact, Citizens Against Government Waste outlined a lot of the continued spending that's ongoing, not new spending, but continued spending that's pork that shouldn't be in there. One of the things the president can do is he can put up on the website every bit of information that's been conveyed by members of Congress to his administration asking for directed spending. That gives you transparency to the voters so they know what your member of Congress is asking for.
Dr. Coburn, yesterday the Senate rejected the Buffett Rule. President Obama has admitted that the Buffett Rule wouldn't have closed the debt. Why do you think that President Obama and Democrats have pushed the Buffett Rule so hard?
Because they're operating on a politics of division, and it's another sign of the failed leadership of the president. It's easy to divide people. Real leadership brings people together. Where is the president's plan to revise the tax code? To totally revise it, how do we broaden it, flatten it, and increase the revenues of the federal government to help our debt and deficit and increase job and job creation in our country? There's no plan out there. He hadn't offered one. So what the Buffett Rule was all about dividing people. And we should be proud of people who are successful. The Republicans have already said we agree that the very wealthy in this country ought to pay more in taxes. But we're not going to allow him to cherry pick one area when we're not going to get any reforms across the base that will actually grow the government. Remember, the vast majority of these people who he wanted to hit with increased taxes are the very small business people who are actually creating jobs out there. So we need a balanced approach. We need, yes, the wealthy need to pay more in taxes, but we also need to get rid of lots of the loopholes. We put out a study called Tax Subsidies for the Rich and Famous. It's $30 billion a year. We can do a lot with that. And we can do a lot in the negotiation, but the president needs to lay things on the table. He won't lay anything on the table on Medicare. He won't lay anything on the table on Social Security. He won't lay anything on the table on tax reform other than to use something as a political game and divisive for the next election rather than fixing the problems of our country. I'd happily support the wealthy people paying more. When I talk to those very same people, what they say, they're happy to pay more. They just want to make sure that what they pay actually goes to reduce the debt rather than to grow the government. And that's a big problem in Washington. The government's twice the size it was in 2001. Most people don't realize that.
Now, disappointing jobs data has the Federal Reserve contemplating a third round of stimulus. What impact would this have on the economy, and would this move be strictly political?
Oh, I don't know if it'll be political. It delays the day of reckoning to a certain degree. It increases, gives the stock market a bump. What they're really doing, what is quantitative easing doing? All it is printing money. Printing money eventually debases the currency. And what it does is it's a hidden tax on every middle-income American that says, we're going to do this, we're going to create another $1 trillion here out of thin air, but the value of your home, the value of your savings, the value of your retirement is going to buy a whole lot less as a consequence of this.
Now, President Obama today asked Congress to implement a plan that would involve the strengthening of federal supervision of oil markets. Will this have any effect on gas prices?
Probably not, because most of the speculation, first of all, if you do that in America, the consideration is that American investors control all this. This is a world market, so you can change all the rules you want to here. All it takes is one punch on a computer and you're at the London Commodity Exchange, or you're trading oil somewhere else. So How much has speculation affected it? Probably some. But what is the speculation about? It's about the threat of a war in Iran. It's about the feeling that maybe supplies will not be as great as what the demand will be. What about he didn't say anything about the speculation that's absolutely driving down natural gas prices. It's $1.95 per million BTUs today. And there's some things that say that if they continue to short the natural gas futures, that'll be under $1 by this summer. You didn't hear anything about that, so it's fine if we have it. You're not going to have a market without speculation, and you're not going to have just a domestic American market.
Last question, Senator Coburn. The Supreme Court is expected to issue its ruling on the president's health care law in June. Let's say the law is found unconstitutional and the president goes on to win a second term. How might the president and Democrats then go about imposing the laws behind this law on Americans?
Well, they will. If it's upheld and if the president gets a second term, you will see the quality of care in this country decline. You will see the cost of everybody's health care markedly go up. You will see states bankrupted through the expansion of Medicaid, even though they're going to pay for 90% of it for the first 10 years. The fact is we will take all market forces away from health care. There won't be any insurance companies left, and the default position will be a government-run, single-payer healthcare system, and they know it, and that's exactly what they want to happen.
All right. Well, again, the book is The Debt Bomb, A Bold Plan to Stop Washington from Bankrupting America, available on Amazon.com and in bookstores everywhere. Senator Tom Coburn, congratulations on the book, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.